Next week you all have the lab final, right? Tuesday, piece of cake. And Thursday you have the theory exam over 21, 22, 23, and 27. Is that right? Okay, I have just copied over the integrity sessions for all of those chapters. And so you should get started on those. So again, I'm just going to hit on some of the major points, so make sure you go back through those older integrity sessions to get the full explanation of information here in these chapters. Any questions?
So
Yeah.
instead of listening to your integrity sessions that we do here, we should just go ahead and listen to the old ones because they have complete information, more detail.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't have time to go as in-depth with the limited time we have. Yeah. But you can listen to both of them. A little reinforcement.
No, I was just trying to break it down so I know what you like.
Well, but I don't know exactly what I said. I know I spent more time on it. I may say something a little different this time, so however you wish. I'm just letting you know, study hints are what you need to know. That's really what you go by, the study hints. And so if you're not getting everything you need from one of the integrity sessions, check out another one. Okay. The vascular system. So we're still in the cardiovascular system here, and the blood vessels are what we're focusing in on here. You all have learned the names of the major blood vessels, and this chapter just kind of goes into more detail about the structure of blood vessels, things like blood pressure, which affects blood vessels, and also the differences between the types of blood vessels. So all those are important here, and how important the blood vessels are in maintaining homeostasis. We talked a little bit in the autonomic nervous system about how blood flow can be shifted from one part of the body to another. Remember that? So if you're under a stressful condition, fighting, running, then the blood vessels can be manipulated in order to make sure the most vital and most important organs are receiving what? Adequate blood flow for the actions that are taking place. So remember that the autonomic nervous system, you have the two divisions, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So one of those divisions, for example, would increase blood flow to skeletal muscles. And you would expect for that to be which one? Which division? Increase blood flow to skeletal muscles? Sympathetic. So you should kind of be able to reason why that is. So that would involve what? Manipulation of the blood vessels. So that would involve probably dilating blood vessels to get more blood to those muscle tissues. Whereas other parts of the body, you would constrict the blood vessels. So in other words, you're shifting the blood from one area of the body to another. And that is done, as we'll see, by stimulating those smooth muscles that are in the walls of our blood vessels. So first of all, we've already defined arteries and veins. So you should make sure you remember those. So arteries are what? What is an artery? Anybody? Okay, that's what they do, but what are they? Blood vessels. So the correct answer would be blood vessels that carry blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart. Thank you. Now let's try veins. What are veins? Blood vessels that carry blood toward the heart. Good. And what are capillaries? Blood vessels that directly, oh, you know I hate just reading like that. Tell me in your own words what capillaries are. Good. Much better. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so capillaries, we'll talk a lot more about them because they're so important. So in looking at the entire circulatory system, we have the heart connected to blood vessels, right? Connected to the aorta, which is a vessel, the arteries, everything's connected. So as the blood continues to travel through those systemic arteries, eventually blood is going to come up on the capillaries, and the capillaries are important because that's where gas exchange occurs. Anything else besides gas exchange occur at that place? Exchange of anything, right? So the capillaries is the capillaries are the only place where substances that are in the blood can be sent to tissues. Okay, so that's the only place where there's diffusion of materials from the bloodstream to the tissues and from the tissues to the bloodstream. Okay, and that includes nutrients, hormones, right? So food products, vitamins, so those are able to get into the tissues. White blood cells, certain cells that are sent to a certain site because there's infection in that tissue. So the capillaries is where everything that's in the blood that has to get out of the blood is able to exit. We'll hit on that again. So there are 5 types of blood vessels. So what is the difference between arteries and arterioles? Huh? Arterioles are smaller. Smaller in what? Diameter, right? Good. And they lead into, so blood in the arterioles leads into the capillaries. Okay? What is the difference between arterioles and venules? Hmm? Good. But that's kind of how I want you all to think about this. So arterioles are small, tiny arteries. So if we're talking about the arterioles and venules of our systemic circuit, remember there's a difference between pulmonary circuit and our systemic circuit. So the arterioles are different from the venules, number one, because one is an artery and one is a vein, right? The other is because of their content, gas content. So arterioles have are oxygen rich, whereas venules are CO2 rich. So arterioles are tiny arteries that deliver oxygenated blood to the capillaries. Venules are veins, tiny veins, that return CO2 rich blood back toward the heart. Okay, difference between venules and veins. Venules are smaller than veins. Okay. 2 groups of blood vessels, the pulmonary circuit, systemic circuit. Just got through going through those. So when you look at the blood vessel wall, it has layers that you should be familiar with. Those layers are called tunics or coats. And so looking at a blood vessel, you have an inner layer, middle layer, and outer layer. The inner layer of all of our blood vessels is made up of endothelium, sometimes referred to as endothelium. Endo meaning inside, and it's epithelial tissue. So one layer of tissue there, the endothelium. So the endothelium then would be the blood vessel layer that is in direct contact with what? Blood. Okay, so you have a blood vessel. What's inside of a blood vessel? Blood. Why y'all so quiet? So
Right.
the blood. Okay, I'll give you that. So the blood is in contact with the endothelial layer. Okay, not the middle layer or outer connective tissue layer. Okay. All right. So you can see the arteries and the veins. The outer layer is connective tissue. You have the middle layer, which is where the smooth muscle is. So remember, blood vessels have a muscular layer, and that is smooth muscle. And then the inner endothelium, you can see there. And so in the picture here, you have the arterioles meeting up with the capillaries. So these are capillaries, and then the venules carrying that blood away from the tissues. So in capillaries, notice don't have all those layers. The capillaries just have one layer of cells, and that is the endothelium. So the endothelium is continuous through the heart, the inner surface of the heart, and also the inner layer of the blood vessels. And the capillaries, again, just are one layer of cells. Why would that be important? Why wouldn't you want the capillaries to have a muscular layer and a connective tissue layer? What do you think that would interfere with? What is it that capillaries are supposed to do? Allow for nutrients and gases, exactly, that are inside the capillary to diffuse out here to the tissues. So if you had all those layers, there would not be diffusion. That's why you don't have gas exchange in the arteries and arterioles and venules and veins, because they have too many layers for anything to exit the blood or enter the blood. Okay. Now some of the basic things you all already know. So you all remember the names of blood vessels? Hopefully, most of them. The name kind of tells you the area. And that's basically what I expect for you all to know. For example, you should know that the femoral artery is not in the arm. Right? So some of them, again, you should be able to think of like that. Another thing, so when you look at this picture, just looking at it and where the arteries are, let's take the carotid arteries. You should have an idea what the role of the carotid artery is to some degree. Think about that for a minute. Very good. So the carotid arteries, based on the location that you see, first of all, you should be able to tell me what direction blood is flowing in your carotid arteries. Is it going up or down? Right? So you should know that. So how do you know that? How do you know it's going up? Right, because the carotid arteries are connected to the what? Aorta. So blood from the aorta just came from the what? Heart. So blood going away from the heart is obviously going away from the heart. So it's going up. Okay? So arteries, these are arteries, right? The carotid arteries are carrying blood away from the heart. That's why they're called arteries. And if you know the location of the artery, you should have an idea what direction it's going in. Okay? So it's going from the heart on up toward the brain. So it supplies the brain then with the oxygen and nutrients that the brain cells need. Okay? Let's compare that to the jugular vein. So you should know the difference between a carotid artery and jugular vein in terms of the direction that blood is flowing, what is being carried, and where is it coming from and where is that blood going. Okay, so the jugular vein, blood is going in which direction? Down. How do you know? Because veins do what? Carry blood to the heart. Okay, back from the tissue. So the carotid artery and jugular vein service the same part of the body. Which is the brain, right? But they just have two different things that they're doing for the brain. So the carotid artery is supplying what? Oxygen-rich blood to the brain tissue. The jugular vein is draining, bringing back all of the what? CO2 and waste material from the brain tissue. Okay, so that's kind of the way you all should think about these things now that you know what arteries and veins are, that you know which vessels are CO2 rich and which vessels are oxygen rich. So compare the femoral artery and femoral vein. Femoral artery, blood is going in which direction? Femoral artery. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. So in the femoral artery, blood is going down. Y'all got it now? Okay, so the femoral veins, then blood is going up toward the heart. Okay, so that's going to be draining the tissues that were supplied by the femoral artery. Okay. All right, the hepatic portal system. So the main thing to know, again, is basically that blood leaving the heart, it has a purpose. It's going to the tissues to make sure those cells have adequate oxygen and nutrients. Blood leaving the tissues ends up coming back to the heart and then to the lungs, so CO2 can be expelled. Okay, so that's kind of how the system is. You have the arteries sending blood to the capillaries, the veins carrying blood away from the tissue, capillaries, and allowing that CO2-rich blood to return to the heart and on to the lungs. In a few instances, though, you have blood leaving a capillary, right? So you have here where the blood that is going to the organs of the digestive system, those, even though the capillaries are there, before blood goes back to the heart, it makes another stop through the hepatic portal system. Okay? So so what is this? Can you all tell what this is? So it's part of the colon, part of the large intestine. So let's just take that for example. So there's going to be oxygen-rich blood that is sent to the colon here. And all of that oxygen and nutrients will be sent to the walls of the colon. Blood leaving the colon is going to be what rich? CO2 rich. Okay? And unlike all the other tissues of the body, blood leaving the colon doesn't go directly to the heart. It makes another stop first at the liver. Okay? And that's the same for all of these digestive organs. You can see the small intestine, blood leaving the small intestine doesn't go directly to the heart. It first makes a stop at the liver. You have the stomach, the pancreas, the spleen. So all of those organs have the hepatic portal system, which allows the blood to go to the liver before it is sent to the heart. That's not the case for the skin of any skin of my body, the tissue of my big toe. All of the blood that goes to those other organs, after it leaves those tissues, it goes directly to the heart. So why would we have these digestive organs sending blood first to the liver before it stops at the heart? It's like an extra stop. But why do you think that is? You know every part of the body has a purpose. Very good. So these digestive organs, some of the foods we eat have toxins that the body wants to inspect and filter before sending it on through the body. In fact, a lot of the medications that we take have to be tested, because if you take a medication orally, it goes to your digestive organs, and then it goes to the liver. So the liver will alter some medications so they're not continuously sent through the bloodstream. The liver is what breaks them down. So when scientists are testing whether medications work or not, one of the things they have to consider is, what is the liver going to do with the medication? And some medications are not going to work because the liver is going to change them to maybe an inoperable form. So they have to do all those tests. So the liver, again, as you all said, what it does, one of the things it does is it breaks down toxins. You know, it converts alcohol to a form that is not as toxic. But it also stores vitamins, and it converts carbohydrates. We'll talk about carbs next week. But it converts carbohydrates that come through our digestive tract, converts all of those to glucose. So the liver is very busy working on all of the materials that come from the digestive system. So that's basically what you have with the hepatic portal system. Okay. And gas exchange. All right, we'll stop there. I get the sense that you all are